Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm one of the events hosts here at McNally. Thank you so much for coming out on this sweaty and interesting fall evening. Just a few quick things before we begin. If you got a voucher, amazing. You can use that voucher today anywhere in the store. You can buy any of these lovely authors a drink. You can buy any of these lovely authors a book. We love supporting our local authors here, so please just adore them in praise and gifts. But be sure to use the voucher tonight. And also there's going to be a quick Q&A at the end. Start thinking of your questions now. And the bathroom is downstairs right next to the stationery section. So thank you all. Without further ado, I'm going to be introducing our lovely host moderator, awesome person, cool earrings, good. I'm just going to keep gassing up. This is the evening of gassing up at Sapphic Summer eQuinox. So Alysia Lee Ying Saochin is a senior essayist editor at the Rumpus. Her debut collection, A Fish Growing Lungs, was a finalist for the Believer Awards in Nonfiction, and she has received fellowships from the Sawney Writers Conference and the Kenyon Writers Conference, and teaches nonfiction at Warren Wilson College. So give it up for Alysia.
Hi. Ooh, okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you to McNally for hosting us every time we're in New York City. I like to joke with my boss, the publisher of the Rumpus magazine, and say that I had one good idea while I was editor-in-chief, and that good idea was that I was sitting in the back of a couple lesbians' cars, and I was thinking out loud, because that's what I do, and I said something along the lines of have you ever noticed how there's so many gays who are dating, and they're great writers? And then it turned into a thing. And not me, someone in the front seat was like, what if you called it Sapphic storytelling? And I was like, oh, it's alliterative, I like it. And so we've just been running with that now for several years. And so alliteration aside, we just thought that it would be really cool to basically get queers who are amazing writers reading together, often with their beloveds, just because I feel that's not always a thing. And so here we are tonight, and I'm just so very delighted to have these four writers here, as I imagine all of you are as well, and that's why you're here. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end. I also have Rumpus swag that I was supposed to maybe give you before this started. So if you find me afterward, I have things to give you. They are letters. Yeah, it's very secret. They're sealed. Come find me afterward and I'll give you some swag. But yes, so we'll have some readers. Unfortunately, Kelly and CJ could not make it this evening. One has COVID, and the other, as they texted to say, have been making out with them and stuff. So the chances of them also testing positive in the next few days is relatively high. So unfortunately, they can't be here tonight, but we love them, and they're here in spirit. So with that, without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our first reader this evening, Jaquira Diaz. And I don't actually remember when Jaquira and I met, but funny story, we went to the same MFA program, and Jaquira was a few years before me, and we both were in the nonfiction track, and so we both worked with the same professors, and the guy who was my thesis advisor, was he your thesis advisor too?
No, that's a long story.
Okay. Well, the guy who was my thesis advisor would always be like, do you know what Jaquira did? Do you know when Jaquira was here? Do you know what she did? If only you were more like Jaquira. No, I'm kidding. He actually didn't say that last part. But he did say how wonderful she was, and it was such a treat to actually get to meet her a few years later. So Jaquira Diaz, as you may know, is the author of Ordinary Girls, winner of a Whiting Award, a Florida Books Award Gold Medal, a Lambda Literary Awards finalist, American Bookseller Association Indies Introduced Selection, among many other prizes. She herself is a recipient of the Jean Cordova Prize for the Lesbian Queer Nonfiction, the Alonzo Davis Fellowship, an Elizabeth George Foundation grant, as well as fellowships from McDowell, Kenyon, Breadloaf, Sewanee, and more. Very exciting. She is the co-executive producer of Ordinary Girls, currently in development with FX. She lives in New York with her spouse, the writer Lars, whom we will hear from later this evening, and teaches at Columbia University. Please give it up for Jaquira.
I'm sorry about your MFA experience.
I'm sorry for everyone's MFA experience.
I'm also sorry for all of you, those of you who are writers. So I was considering reading, I have a novel coming out sometime in the future. I predict that it will come out sometime in the future. And I was thinking about reading from that book and then changed my mind, in part because it opens with a murder. And I thought, I can't do that to y'all because the rest of it is just depressing. And so, this is also depressing, but in a different way. In a sexy way, there's sex in it. So, I'm gonna read from my book, and it's a chapter called Battle Stations. And this is just an excerpt. So I'm gonna skip ahead. All you need to know is I have suddenly arrived in military boot camp. So I'm in the Navy, and everything is strange and weird in that military way. In boot camp, far from home, far from friends and family, I met Alysia. She was in my division, and we sometimes had fire watch together in the middle of the night. She was tall and strong, with broad shoulders and a buzz cut, and I sometimes watched her from afar. I knew she was gay. I could just tell. One morning in the galley, while we were sitting down to breakfast after physical training, Alysia across from me, our eyes met. We looked at each other for a long time, not saying anything because we weren't allowed to speak, watching each other longer than was acceptable, longer than was comfortable, and I just knew. It was like we found each other in a crowd, like all we could see was each other. After a while, I looked away, hoping that Jimo sitting next to me hadn't noticed. I could still feel her eyes on me then, and afterward, as we all got up to bus our trays, as we all headed back outside to get information, as we double-timed it back to the USS car to get in the showers, and then while we were in the showers, I knew every single curve of her body, every tattoo, and she knew mine. It went on like that for a while, Alysia and I looking at each other, not saying anything. Sometimes while we were sitting in class, I'd catch her watching me from across the room, and she'd look away. Other times I'd be sitting in the back, watching her, waiting for her to look back at me, and most of the time she wouldn't, but sometimes it was like she could feel me watching her too. I'm gonna skip forward. Since our ship was attacked, flooded, and on fire, it was sinking. We'd spend the next 12 hours moving from one scenario to the other. We had to pull all the ropes and secure them to get the ship underway. We had to carry the wounded to safety. We had to walk through a maze in a part of the ship that had been almost entirely destroyed by fire. Feel our way toward the flames in the dark without touching the hot bulkheads. Walk through the smoke. Hold on to the fire hose as we pointed it at the flames in the dark. We had to abandon ship, jump over the edge into the ocean, and swim to the nearest rescue boat while avoiding shark attacks. During boot camp, we'd been trained to abandon ship by climbing a 15-foot tower and jumping feet first into the deep end of the Olympic-sized pool. In battle stations, the tower was twice as high, and there were Navy SEALs in the water pretending to be sharks. If one of them caught you, you were dead. I was standing at the top of the 35-foot tower after my whole squad had jumped. They were all in the water, swimming among the sharks toward the rescue boats, and I was frozen. I was supposed to jump. If I didn't, I'd get recycled, and my team might not pass battle stations. I moved closer to the edge, measured the distance between the tower and the rescue boat. I looked straight ahead at the clock on the wall across the pool, but I couldn't make out the time. It was the middle of the night. By tomorrow afternoon, battle stations would be over, and most of our 2 divisions would be handed would be handed their official Navy covers. Those who didn't pass would have to keep wearing their recruit ball caps and wouldn't be able to graduate. Everyone would know. I had to jump. I had to go over the edge, land feet first in the water, and swim. But I couldn't get off that tower. In the pool, one of the Navy SEALs surfaced, started treading water, pulled his snorkel out of his mouth. When he saw me, he called up to me, "Get off that tower, recruit." Behind me, another Navy SEAL was climbing the ladder, coming after me. Everyone in the water was looking up at the tower, at me. In the rescue boat, Brooks and Gmo were already sitting back, watching. Jones and Williams climbing onto the boat. "You better get off this water, recruit," the Navy SEAL behind me said. Tower. There I was, in front of my whole squad, Brooks and Jones and Williams and Gmo and all the other squads that had already finished, drying off by the side of the pool, everyone watching. "You better get off this tower before I throw you off," the Navy SEAL said, and I flinched. All those times I'd considered jumping off the balcony in Southgate Towers, the 8th floor, the 15th floor, that time I jumped off the roof of a 2-story building. I'd been so high. But now, on this tower, I was sober, painfully sober, and everyone was looking toward me expecting some kind of bravery. But didn't they know? I wasn't brave. I was a girl who was scared of the dark. A girl so scared of being hurt, she would always leave first. I'd never been brave. And then I heard Gmo's voice. "Come on, Jackie," he yelled, "come on." In front of our entire division, in front of all the RDCs, everybody looking from Gmo to me, realizing that he called me by a nickname, not my last name, not even my first name. Nobody in the Navy knew me as Jackie, only Gmo. He didn't know it yet, and maybe I didn't either, but before the month was up, I would fuck him over. We'd both be out of boot camp, in tech corps, and he'd be the same Gmo, this earnest, smart, hard-working, funny guy from California who liked lowriders and played spades and wanted kids someday. Exactly who he'd always said he was. He'd come visit me in my barracks, and I'd be a completely different person, and he'd look me in the eyes and not recognize me, say, "What happened to you, Jackie? This isn't you." He wouldn't know it, but by then, I'd already be gone. I looked down again, then straight ahead. I folded my arms across my chest, feet together, deep breath. I closed my eyes and stepped off the tower, felt the hollow in the pit of my stomach. I had dreamed of this moment so many times, my body falling through the air, the concrete below, the ocean below, nothing below. Is this what the French woman felt? What if gravity is a lie we've been told? What if I never land? What if I fall forever? I heard myself scream all the way down, and then I hit water. After battle stations, late one night, Eliza and I were assigned to do laundry for our entire division during watch. It was the first time we had a real conversation. That night, we loaded the washers, added the soap, and then sat on the laundry room floor, listening to Drew Hill on her Discman, sharing her headphones, the two of us singing, "We're Not Making Love No More." After battle stations, everything was less tense, and the RDCs barely came up to check on us while everybody was sleeping, so we could just hang out. We folded laundry, told each other stories. She told me about her daughter, who was at home with her ex-husband. "Do you miss her?" I asked. "It's hard," she said, "but I'm doing this all for her. She understands." I was surprised she had a daughter, an ex-husband, an entire life that included a family. She was butch, muscular, with a husky voice, and she was comfortable in her own body. She was older than me, and it seemed she knew exactly who she was. How freely she just took my hand and sang to me and asked whatever she wanted to know. How easily she could break my heart. Even in her navy t-shirt and ridiculous gym shorts, she was sexy. I couldn't picture her with a man. As hard as I tried, I could only picture her with me. We sat there for a while, listening to music and singing, and then she kissed me. I kissed her back. I wanted to put my hands all over her, but didn't know how. I licked the soft tendons of her neck, her shoulder blades, the small of her back, all sweat and salt. There was no art to what we did. When she fucked me, it was fast. The two of us watching the laundry room doors, exasperated, like we were grasping at something, the clock on the wall ticking like it was set to detonate. As soon as it was over, I was already thinking in the past tense. As much as I dreamed of this moment, and even though for the first time in my life, I finally felt like myself, like the woman I was supposed to be, and even though I knew I could have loved her, the truth is, I never intended to love her in the real world. That's who I was, a girl who ran. Months after boot camp, after I'd moved on to electronics school, walking down the corridors in the tech core school building, I heard a couple sailors whispering and laughing and calling out, "Hey, don't ask, don't tell." I kept walking, not really paying attention until I heard it again, "Don't ask, don't tell." I turned around and saw that the two of them, laughing, covering their mouths, and realized that I was the only other person in the hallway. They were talking to me, laughing at me. Every day after that, walking past the groups of mostly guys huddled in the hallways, I had to hear and not hear and keep walking as they said it again and again and again. "Don't ask, don't tell." "Hey, don't ask, don't tell," until "don't ask, don't tell" became my nickname. I like it now. A few days later, as we lined up in formation outside the barracks, one of my boot camp shipmates came to join me. Jones. He stood right next to me, smiling. "What's up?" I said. He didn't reply, just smiled, like he knew something I didn't know. Behind him, another sailor lined up. "Hey Diaz, I heard you like to eat pussy," he said, loud enough so that our whole group heard. Everybody laughed. Jones was still smiling, and I realized in on the joke. I didn't say anything. I turned and faced forward, kept my military bearing, face expressionless, heart pounding in my chest. He kept talking. Everybody knows. Everybody's talking about it. Somebody, I can't say who, even made up a song about you. For weeks afterward, on the street, in the barracks corridors, as I mopped the floors on the quarterdeck while on duty, guys would rap as they walked behind me, would break into spontaneous rhyming the second I stepped into a room. Later, after I'd gotten kicked out of Tech Corps, after a long period of unauthorized absences, after I'd gone AWOL and become a military deserter, after turning myself in, standing in my old barracks in front of a petty officer who would look at me with disgust and call me a coward and traitor, words that would stick to me, that would define how I saw myself for years. After everyone had heard I was back, after another petty officer cornered me in the hallway, ordered me to stand at attention, screamed in my face, tiny splatters of his spit landing on my cheek, and after a seaman recruit, 2 ranks below me, came up to me in the chow line, asked, "What are you doing breathing my air, Diaz? What the hell are you doing in my Navy?" It would still be Jones I thought of. I'd see the 5 of us, our squad carrying him in the combat stretcher, our squad carrying each other during that last run after 12 hours, that final mile. Brooks pulling Williams' wet sea bag off her shoulders, strapping it on himself. Gmo behind me, not letting me slow down. Jones next to me. When I knew he could run faster, much faster, saying, "You better keep pounding that pavement, Diaz. You better keep pushing." I had loved boot camp, the Navy. It was in the Navy where I'd been able to imagine living past 18, where I finally felt like I mattered. But I would eventually run. Thank you.
Thank
you so much for that. The problem with emceeing when you like the readers, I've found, is that then you have to talk immediately after when you just want to like keep having feelings, or maybe that's just me. Up next, I'm delighted to introduce...
Closer?
Closer?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you for telling me. I'm
I
pretty
wanted everyone
loud.
to hear you.
Yeah, well, do we? I don't know. We're really here for the readers. So our next reader is, I'm so delighted to welcome Lars Horn, who, before I read the official bio, I'll say, when I first heard about their book coming out, it was the Grey Wolf Prize winner, for those of you who didn't know. And as soon as I read the announcement, I was like, when the fuck is this book coming out? Because I need it immediately. And during that time, I still had my limited power as editor-in-chief, and I was like, how can we, what are the things that I can do with this book in any way possible? Can I have a galley, right now? And Lars put together this really wonderful reading list for us, and I don't even know what to say, except you should all look at it, because I think reading it will make you a better person. And so with that, Lars Horn is a writer and translator working in literary and experimental nonfiction. Their first book, Voice of the Fish, won the 2020 Grey Wolf Nonfiction Prize, the 2023 Great Lakes College Association New Writers Award, and was named an honor book for the 2023 Stonewall Israel Fishman Nonfiction Book Award, and also an American Bookseller Association Indies Introduced selection. They are the recipient of several fellowships, including Tin House Without Borders Residency, Sewanee Writers Conference, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and more. Their writing has also appeared in numerous literary magazines, and they hold MAs from the University of Edinburgh, I don't want to read this in French. Anyway, University of Paris, it's very fancy. And Concordia University in Montreal. They also teach at Columbia and live in New York with their wife, who is sitting between us right now. Please help me welcome Lars Horn.
Is that good for everyone? Thank you so much for that bio. I love that. And thank you for the introduction. Thrilled to be here and gonna read. I'm afraid that we were given a 10-minute reading slot, and I don't choose the reading, I just have different times. So a happy fun reading is 12 to 15, but 10 minutes is just sad. Sad reading for 10 minutes. So don't blame me, blame the time. Yeah, Jaquira went for sexy, I just got sad. I said, should I read something else? And she went, do you have anything else? At 10 minutes, I went, nah. So, alright, bear with me all. And thanks for coming out. What manner of land? Each December in Sicily's Syracuse, 60 men in green berets carry a simulacrum of Santa Lucia through the streets. Over 12 feet tall and sculpted from 200 pounds of silver, the martyr towers above the crowds. A dagger pierces her neck. A reliquary glitters in her chest. One arm cradles a palm leaf, whilst the other extends a dish from which flames leap as the saint's severed eyeballs survey the townsfolk. Venerated across Italy and Scandinavia, Santa Lucia, or Saint Lucy, is one of Christianity's oldest martyrs, perishing in 304 AD during the Diocletian persecution. Lucia's father, born to Syracusan nobility, died in her early years, leaving Lucia to the care of her widowed and ailing mother. In adulthood, Lucia, a devout believer, took her mother, Eutychia, to St. Agatha's tomb, a pilgrimage that not only cured Eutychia of a bleeding disease, but convinced her to distribute the family's wealth as Lucia had long wished. Learning that Lucia was bestowing the family's heritage and jewels upon the poor, her betrothed denounced her faith to Paschasius, governor of Syracuse. Paschasius ordered Lucia to burn a sacrifice before his image. When she refused, he sentenced her to defilement in a brothel. And so it came to pass. Pascacius's guards went to escort Lucia from the governor's chambers and floundered. Lucia stood impossibly, divinely fast. The guards yoked a team of oxen to Lucia, but still the martyr could not be dragged. They heaped wood at her feet, set torches to dry logs, but the flame refused to take. Instead, Lucia addressed the governor, prophesied, "You will be punished, Pascacius. The Diocletian rule shall fall. Maximian's end calls." At this, Pascacius had Lucia's eyes gouged from their sockets and a sword thrust through her neck. Blinded, silenced, Lucia died. Other legends maintain that Lucia tore out her own eyes, sending them as a deterrent to an unwanted admirer. Advice for anyone who's... In both cases, Lucia's eyes are said to have been miraculously restored upon burial. The patron saint of Syracuse and Perugia, Italy, Lucia's patronage extends to martyrs, virgins, authors, cutlers, glaziers, saddlers, stained glass workers, and even salesmen. But above all, Santa Lucia is the patron saint of sight, the blind, and is invoked against ocular diseases. In iconographic representations, Lucia's eyes blink from salvers, swivel within the saint's own palms. In a painting by Francesco del Cossa, they bud from a tree branch. Presiding over sight and blindness, light and darkness, Santa Lucia is traditionally celebrated in the frost-bitten, dead hours of the winter solstice, hours when she rises, guardian of Earth's longest, darkest night. Royal Leamington Spa, UK, 6:30 a.m, winter solstice, 2013. Locking the door to my mother's house, I walked the 10 minutes to the local swimming pool. The night still lingered, metallic, biting, mist curled off the river, silver quickly followed by darkness. I pulled my Reebok windbreaker further up my face, pushed up the bank, and turned onto the gravel footpath. Some way off, beyond the trees, beyond the steep bank that saw the walkers slide, almost fall into the churn, the river twisted between fields, glittering blocks of flats. As I watched the mist spiral above the tree line, I heard the crunch of trainers over gravel. In front of me, a man approached. White, 6 foot tall, light grey tracksuit, scarf wound about his mouth and nose. My breath caught. "Get a grip, Lars. It's just a man out walking." I cleared my throat. "Gone. Over." He kept walking. So did I. Street lamps pooled, splashed off the curb. Now and then the light poured across a car windscreen, rushed off the bodywork. Early that midwinter morning, I was minutes from reaching the pool. Minutes from my day, months, years of my life, carrying on uninterrupted, when the man I'd passed decided I was the person he wanted to abduct. This man who jogged back, whom I heard before I felt, soft footfall, shadow, strange movement, this man who under the smouldering orange of a street lamp wrenched me back by the mouth. Told you it was sad. In 2014, don't worry, keeping the humor going. In 2014, scientists at Surrey Nanosystems revolutionized black pigment when they created Vanta Black, a black fabricated by growing cultures of carbon nanotubes on aluminium foil. The resulting surface absorbed 99.96% of visible light, flattening all forms it covered. In 2019, MIT scientists Brian Wardle and Kehan Kui unveiled a new blackest black, this time absorbing 99.995% of all light. When questioned about his team's discovery and the global search to create an ever blacker black, Wardle, professor of aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, simply remarked, "The blackest black is a constantly moving target. Someone will find a blacker material and eventually will understand all the underlying mechanisms and will be able to properly engineer the ultimate black." I remember the leather of his glove, cold, blunt force, blood. His hands clenched my teeth, tongue, throat, yanked my windbreaker until I choked, and our bodies, all the while our bodies bathed in lamplight, amber, liquid in the carbon night. I remember that I screamed, that even then I didn't recognize the sound as coming from my own mouth, how it tore my lungs, my whole chest, more chemical blister than breath. The man dragged me into a thicket, though I do not remember being dragged. I simply remember coming to, my body no longer on the path, the unevenness of earth, grass. I'm going to die. The world empty, inky, vacuous. Maybe he'll just rape me. If he just rapes me, that'll be okay. The world empty, save a deer, ochre bolt, disturbed before sunrise. And the constellations, gateways in some eternal night. Now, when I look out at the night, it appears denser, darker than it did before. In places, my vision blurs between the real and the imagined. I might be walking home, glancing from a window across the backyards, but the night looms unnatural. In places, I swear it swallows itself. I've grown used to it, slowly, across the years. This darkness that could hold a minotaur. And I know logically, in this era of microwaves and MRI scans, of probes, keyhole surgery, and satellites, that this is some echo of a traumatic event, some old weight that presses upon my eyes. But in that small time before sleep, as the night stains its way over this ancient sky, I let my thoughts drift, consider if there might be some arrogance to dismissing previous ways of seeing. Where did they go, all the gods and the beasts, the jackals and winged horses, sphinxes and fish, all those creatures that weighed our organs in the afterlife, fed on years ill-lived? What do they tow now, those creatures that carried the sun and the stars, drew the moon to its place in the firmament each night? In those hours, I consider whether this world really is lined in shadow, thin veil between spheres, whether when our bodies plunge, drag against and fray the weave, a kind of night bleeds, dense, resinous, vast beyond means. Maybe it is in these moments, when we almost cross over, when we believe we see the other side, that we blur the boundary between the living and the dead, that we bring a supernatural darkness back with us through the gauze. Stemming from the Latin lux, or light, Santa Lucia comes as beacon in name as well as martyrdom. Lucia is often conceptualized as a bringer of light, her significance understood somewhat simplistically as that of luminous salvation, a saint to banish the darkness, terrestrial and metaphysical alike. But in northern Italy, tradition dictates that each December, on the eve of her feast day, Lucia leaves children gifts as they sleep. In anticipation, offerings of food crowd side tables, doorsteps, coffee for Lucia, bread for Castaldo, her escort, and a fistful of flour for her donkey. But the event comes with one condition. No child may see Santa Lucia, for if they do, the saint will throw ashes in their eyes, blinding them for the night. According to this belief, Santa Lucia appears as a figure who deprives sight, who might bestow darkness as much as alleviate it. No longer conceived in simple opposition to darkness and suffering, Lucia possesses a more complex, even tangled relationship to both. Her faith confirmed in violence, her martyrdom baptized by blinding. Santa Lucia is a light born of darkness as much as a light to banish it. She understands long nights and their disturbing gifts, how they bestow ways of seeing, sights that cannot be unseen, how from darkness strange beasts come lumbering, fanged, shaggy, matted, how they pant from one's mouth, how they bite. Thank you very much.
Do you see what I mean about how it's really hard to like talk after? We do, Lars. Sorry, just resetting. And now I'm going to turn to my right. And our next two readers. First up is Hannah Beresford, who I had the pleasure of meeting 2 years ago? What is time? Some amount of time ago. And I'm delighted to say that one of the first things I knew about Hannah before I met her was from Jaquira's Instagram. She posited that lesbians essentially imprinted upon Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, and that her wife was super hot. And then I met Hannah in real life, and I was like, hi. Hannah is a wonderful editor and writer in her own right, and I'm delighted to share that in addition to looking like Leonardo DiCaprio, she is also a prolific gardener who will appreciate you sharing hypothetically a color-coded rose spreadsheet for your garden with her. And she will also saw the one half for you, so it looks like a storybook cottage. So, with that, Hannah Beresford, originally of the Helderberg Escarpment, I think I said that word right, of upstate New York, earned her MFA from NYU after spending her 4 years on red dirt at Oklahoma State. Her poems have been published in journals like The Adroit Review, Mid-American, Sycamore, Pleiades, and others. She's the recipient of a 2019 Poetry Foundation Poetry Incubator Fellowship, a fellowship from Provincetown Fine Arts Work Center, and a graduate from the Teaching Artist Project. She serves as a poetry editor for No Tokens, a freelance editor in all genres, and has taught poetry and creative writing at NYU, Drew University, and the College of Charleston. Please help me welcome Hannah Beresford.
Thank you so much. Is that loud enough? I'm never loud enough.
See if it's a poem.
Is it louder now?
No, there's a problem
Is
with
it
that
louder
microphone.
now?
Yeah, let's swap the mics.
Oh, there's a thing for my- Is that any louder?
You're just really good at reading at mics. I was thinking like, oh, this is the magic mic.
Is that
Yeah.
Thank you, Alysia. That was such a diverse and colorful
I do what I can.
I haven't done a reading in many years, so I feel so honored to be here with all of you. You're all so cool. I was a person who formerly wrote poetry and like more recently have been trying to have fun doing other things. So this is like a shorter part of a longer other thing that in my head is called Moon Party. Eugene loved the cattle, was how Robin's mom had begun. Her face was sun-spotted and gracefully quarried by wind, and Mabel noticed how she clasped her hands together in the mudroom when they first shuffled through the door. Mabel, Sunny, Travis, and Robin were very brand new college friends who just arrived in Robin's family's ranch. That last hour closest to Robin's hometown of Strong City, they plumed dust on dirt roads through fields blackened and jeweled orange with ember. They passed the tops of silos and gas pumps recently cockeyed, crawling back out of their sinkholes. Some of these things were unbelievable. Some were not. Then the four of them sat around Robin's mom on a leather sectional in a drowsy glow of an animal hide lampshade. The living room smelled like the sweetness of wet dogs and coconut. No dogs lived there, but the coconut was where Robin's mom's story began. Eugene loved the cattle, Robin's mom said. Mabel nodded. Grandpa Eugene was an inventor. That's how his mind worked. She squinted her eyes and waxed the air around her head. He was a nut, but he was a smart nut. Sunny raised her eyebrows and sat forward. The corners of her eyes still watered from the smoke, peeled off the charred prairie like oak from a chisel all the drive. And Grandpa Eugene saw the cattle were just too damn hot in the summer, and he saw their coats were just too damn long. So he started to engineer them. Why aren't the cows spotted? Sunny asked the following morning. looking left into the first breezy Bessie's stall. The smell of pineapple had ripened as the late summer high leached dew from the Owens rocking chairs and the steel bucket of the red front loader. Now, down by the Bessie's barn at only mid-morning, the day was downright gummy. Between the twang of sun lotion and the itch of smoke flitting in off that county-wide pasture burn, Mabel couldn't come up for air on the Robbins family's ranch, and in a way she liked that. She felt held in place. What, like, why aren't they spotted black and white? Robin asked, turning around in the aisle of the cow barn ahead of Sunny. Robin wore a yellow Caterpillar t-shirt rolled twice at the sleeves, and her Oakleys shone on top of her head, 2 squirming oil slicks. They don't have hair, Sunny, Travis replied gently. That's the point. They're hairless cows. Well, no, actually. There was a twinge in Robin's voice. She took a slack lead rope and pulled it around the pistol of her thumb and elbow, then hung it neatly back on the stall beside her. They wouldn't have those markings either way. You're thinking of Holsteins, dairy cows. These are Charolais, meat. You'll eat them? Mabel asked. No, not the Bessies. No, not the Bessies, the Charolais, Robin replied. And if they weren't Charolais, they would still have markings without hair. Oh, okay, I might just be a little confused. Sunny laughed too loudly and walked ahead. Mabel looked in the first stall. The cow looked up, hay sprung from her mouth, and her bottom jaw ground slowly from side to side. Her back was long and full and flat. Everywhere she swelled with muscle. She was not carved of hip and shoulder, the way the cows tied lazily down the aluminum fence, the length of the dairy barn at the Richmond County Fair so often looked to Mabel. Hammocks hung from a past hulk, already their remains, or stunned carcasses that might keel over like dominoes as Mabel bit spittily into a candied apple, moments later under the floodlights, beside the growl and astronautic boom of the demolition derby. Mabel had expected the Bessies to look like pigs, meaning Mabel had assumed pigs were bald. Only now, looking at the Bessie, did Mabel see the difference, her true nakedness. The pale pumice hide was sheenless. It rippled in dozens of thin rolls at her withers. She licked her wide nose, her thick gray tongue in her left, then right nostril. Her ears caught the sunlight, which came through the window at the back of her stall, and held it deep pink, like 2 paper lanterns stuck out flat on either side of her broad head. Here's where we butter 'em up, Robin said, at the end of the barn. She pointed around the corner. 4 posts were driven into the ground, squaring a concrete pad. The back and sides were laced with iron rails. 2 ropes hung from either of the front posts. A spigot sprouted in a bunch of blue stems. A bleached hose like snake belly wound up and hung from it. All right, ladies, you ready? Robin said, walking back down the aisle toward the first Bessie's stall. These girls are halter broke. Treat them effectively the same as a horse, never seen a squeeze. She plucked a halter from the stall front and opened the door. You gotta understand the pressure zone. Robin spoke louder now, having disappeared into the stall. The flight zone and the balance point. Where their eyes are at is key, so it's like horses but not the same. She emerged from the stall again. No animals are the same, she scolded. What does that mean exactly, engineering them? Sunny had asked Robin's mom the night before. Oh, it's just, mixing and matching them. Eugene, Robin's grandfather, he wanted a shorter coat on him. So he mixed them. She leaned right on the couch, and he matched them. And she leaned left, and the leather squats beneath her. And well, shit, all the hair's gone. How so? Mabel asked. Gone, poof. Like the way they were born. Yes, bald, naked, all of them. Robin's mom stuck her bottom lip out. But she held one finger up. Tigers, snakes, hairless cats, people love it. She shrugged. In fact, people are crazy for it. Boutique, one of a kind. She smeared the air in front of her in wonder. Breezy Bessies. Breezy Bessies because they are cool, Sunny said. Like cooled off? Exactly. Clever, yes? She paused. Except they aren't at all. They're burned to shit, red as lobsters. This is Mazzy, Robin said as she spun the cow in the wash rack. She clipped the cross ties on either side of Massie's halter, and Massie licked each nostril. Hi, Massie. Mabel touched her forehead, which was warm and tacky. So back over here to the lotion shed, Robin said. She stands fine. She waved at Massie behind her as she walked away toward an outbuilding 10 yards on. Robin swung the shed door in and it smacked against the shelf on the left. There were shelves floor to ceiling on either side and along the back wall too. On each shelf, rows of 1-gallon jugs of Banana Boat SPF 50 suntan lotion. Each row looked stacked 3 deep to the wall. There had to be 600 jugs, Mabel thought. Minutes later, Mabel, Sunny, and Travis were hazmat suited. Robin walked backward toward the wash rack, a suntan lotion jetpack on her back. The shoulder is important, Robin said. Behind her, Maisie dozed. You push from behind the shoulder and you hold her up in front of it. That's your balance point. Don't you just want her to stand still? Sunny asked. I'm just explaining so you know, Robin said, spinning around beside Massie. Start behind the ears. She's used to this, of course. Another animal would react, probably flip right over. Robin threw her hand in the air and Massie started, flung her head right, snapping the left cross tie like a tripwire. Sunny screamed. Massie looked straight back at Sunny, refocused, ears alert, and still, she blinked. No, don't scream, Mabel said. You should never scream, Sunny. Mabel had overheard this at the fair. Okay, let's just everyone settle, Robin said. Massie sighed and hung her head in the cross ties. Start behind the ears and slow at first. Robin held a sprayer nozzle in her right hand, attached to a hose attached to the jetpack basin on her back, and pulled the trigger. It sputtered. Once the line's clear, you get an even cover. The sputtering stopped, and Robin began to move down the side of the cow, her looming bareness, swiping the sprayer up and down like rolling paint. You know, I think I'll do the spraying today. She looked at the 3 of them. Mabel looked over at Sunny and Travis, each with their hoods pulled tight around the rounds of their faces, goggles steamed and carved into their cheeks. She looked down at the dish gloves on her hands, sweat crawling inside. Robin hummed as she ducked under the cross tie and walked around front of Massie. Massie chewed nothing. She shifted her weight from side to side, and she stamped her feet to rid the flies. Sun lotion ran down her pale legs, past the gray callous burls of her knees, and pooled in the cleft of her hoofs. Behind the wash rack, the bed of a rusted green pickup truck stood in the air like a bugle, its back wheels dangling. Cab disappeared underground. Paper plane dove from the sky. Mabel watched the banana cloud rise from Massie's back, clear the barn roof, and scatter.
Thank you so much. I feel like we have sex, sadness, and the moon, animal husbandry. And I feel like these are the things that you really need for a queer reading. So we're doing real good. Our next reader is Jaquira Madden. And before I read her bio, I said this the last time I introduced you, and I'm sorry that you have to hear it again, but I think it's true, and everybody needs to know this. I met Jaquira under, not, she was not the terrible part, but I was in a terrible situation. And someone was like, you know what? You know who's been also in this terrible situation who probably help you? This woman. Her name is Jaquira Madden. I was like, what? You mean the famous writer? And they're like, yeah, I'll give you her phone number. You can chat. And I was like, what? And then we did. It was crazy. And I tell this story just because I feel like, and many of you may know this, great writers and great people are not always, the same. I don't know if you know that, but writers are dicks. Jaquira is just really one of the kindest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, in addition to being a wonderful writer. And as I've gotten to know her more, I feel like my belief has only solidified. So with that, I am delighted to welcome Jaquira Mahealani Madden, who is a writer, amateur magician, and a founding editor of No Tokens, a magazine of literature and art. She is the author of the memoir, you may have heard of it, Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls, and her debut novel, Whitby is forthcoming from Mariner Books. And we're going to get to hear an excerpt.
Thank you, Alysia. I'd love to be introduced as, you know, who also experiences terrible things more often than you would think. But I am really honored to be reading here with my friends and loved ones, and you, Alysia, who are also such an amazing writer too, and Jaquira, who I consider like a sister when our books came out, and then now we have novels coming out, and like Jaquira, my novel also opens with a murder. But I didn't bring a backup, so we're just going in. So this is pulled from the opening chapter. Can you hear me okay since these mics are...
Do you mind scooching forward a little bit?
Sure.
It's literally just that wall that completely...
Yeah, of course. Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. This is pulled from the opening chapter. It's still very much a work in progress, but it's called Whitby. It centers the murder of a child sex abuser, and it's from alternating perspectives of 3 women who've been impacted by this. So just a content heads up there. I didn't know anything about Whidbey Island, only that it was far, only that it would take a great deal of work to get there and significant efforts to be found. When I say I closed my eyes to a map and pointed, I really mean that. I did. But when I opened my eyes to Elko, Nevada, it wasn't exactly far enough, so I moved my finger further west to Whidbey. Now I'd spend the summer there, maybe more, to recollect myself, to find safety at last. Those were other people's words, but I held on to them. Rich introduced himself on the ferry without reason. I'd made no eye contact, asked no questions, though I did clock him, wondering why he'd chosen a seat so close with most of them empty. He just reached out from across the aisle and said, "Hi, I'm Rich," gripping my hand in that firm, too firm, single thrust, this is a professional handshake kind of way. He was handsome for a man, with black seal-like eyes and beautiful poreless skin, and he carried a plastic drugstore bag lumpy with clothes, which he twisted round and round his wrist. He looked about my age, mid-20s, Middle Eastern from where I couldn't tell, and a puff scar ran from his right wrist up his forearm and into his sleeve. Finally I said, "I'm Bertie," taking his hand. For over a year, I'd only introduced myself with pseudonyms, names I'd stolen from various films, Olympic medalists, maligned obsolete pop stars. When I signed into support groups, I was Judy Barton. My mailbox belonged to Marianne Zolanko. Online, Wilmadine Loomis or J.C. Farrow. The sound of my own true name prickled an ash in my mouth, like I was getting away with something. Bertie Chang, I went on. Rich was holding a paperback copy of the Animorphs, which I'd loved as a kid. On the purple cover, a boy in a brown jacket transformed into an eagle in vivid holographic layers. "I haven't seen one of those in years," I said. He bent the book back and forth in his hands, testing its flexibility. It made a warbly sound. $1 cart at Elliott Bay, Rich said. Collected these as a kid. I guess I wanted to take a trip back in time, and you know, this story really holds up. He slapped the book with the back of his hand, as if to emphasize its worth. There's some real literary merit here. I hated men. I hated how a man like Rich could read a book like Animorphs on a boat, unashamed, gleefully. Some real literary merit here. He could say something like that and it would be understood as refreshingly sweet, inspiring maybe. Look at that confident man, my mom would say, not trying to prove himself. Another girl might note the comfort in his masculinity. Of course she would. He'd asked for it. But we were all trying all the time, I reminded myself. That's how we become the people we are, impressionistically, chiseling lumps of our character off the truer form by reactions of others. There was always the effort to prove, though only some people got to do so with pleasure. I tried to reel some empathy from any part of myself. I used to like those books too, I said. Same generation, I guess. You look what, 20, he said? 28. No shit. Asian genes. Same, he said, I get it. Oh, you don't... He waited for me to go on, though I'd hoped he'd drop it. Then he gave me a look like he wouldn't. You Stanford sun-hat Asians always forget brown people Asians, he said. I rolled my suitcase directly in front of me, snapping the handle down. Then I wrapped my legs around the sides of it, squeezing, remembering the book that was inside. You look tired, this man said. Thanks, I said, real tired. I am tired, I said. What do you have going on the Rock? The what? On Whidbey. Trace and I had come up with several possible scenarios for this question. I was visiting family, vague, simple, or I was meeting up with researchers to study different kinds of moss. Always I could pretend to not speak English, the quickest way I knew to be left alone, ignored. But I didn't want to try any of that with this man. He was frank and direct and didn't regard me with pity, something everyone had done for too long. He knew my real name, and speaking to him felt like a challenge, one I shamefully wanted to pass. So I said, I'm hiding from someone. Rich fanned the Animorphs cover with the tip of his thumb, back and forth tightly like a deck of cards. He looked right at me, unmoved, and leaned down in a crouch. I waited for more of a reaction, but it never came. Why? He asked. He trying to hurt you? He already did, I said. He's a pedophile. Still, Rich didn't nudge. His big seal eyes blinked sleepily. Trace would throw me off the boat if she knew I'd said this much. My mother would shake me by the shoulders and say, are you out of your fucking mind? You got this far and then blab your mouth to a stranger? I knew better than to talk. I knew anyone could be working for Calvin, maybe a friend he'd met inside. But there were so many lessons I'd never learned in my life, so many mistakes I'd continued to make, and some thrill giving up and into that disjunction. So how's he gonna hurt you again? Rich asked, sincere maybe in his asking. Well, he'll never give up, I said. He's more or less free now. He writes me nonstop, finds me no matter how many times I change my emails or addresses. What does he say he wants? To hurt you? He says all kinds of stuff, says he wants to apologize, but that's violence too. Does he apologize? Depends. On what? On how you see it, on how you think of apologies. So what's the issue? A woman pushed in from the deck and the wind fluttered Rich's black hair before the door snapped closed. She was yelling into her phone to someone named Joey and said his name a lot. Joey, I said what I said. Listen, Joey, I'm not coming to Ballard. Joey, don't be stupid. The issue, I said, is that he's going to hurt me. Words aren't violence, Rich said. He's inflicted violence on me, on a few people, he'll do it again. Well, Rich said, you said he's a pedophile. Why would he be interested in you now? I didn't like somebody else talking about Calvin as if he knew him, coolly calling him a pedophile. It was unnerving to hear it so casually, with no bulk to it. His tone flattened my deliberate description and my fear into a dust. The whole life I'd lived leading to the word of who Calvin was, and the thorned understanding of what that made me. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I said. Oh, there it is, Rich said. There's where it lives. I looked down at my fingers as if something were stuck there under my nails, something to be addressed. I tried to focus it, the swell, the heat rising, a crimp in the gullet. Trace and I hadn't had sex in almost a year, since Calvin's most recent release. Once we loved fucking in other people's homes or out in public restrooms. She'd even given me head on that slow Epcot time machine ride, a pure reclamation of space, we call that incident, rerouting the trauma of growing up in Florida. One of our couples counselors, an older Danish butch, told me I should take my time. Sex will likely ebb and flow throughout your life, she said. None of this is linear, so what's the rush? And at this, I cried. I hadn't cried in all those sessions, not when I described what had once happened to me, not when I described what was still happening to me, how the once wasn't actually once, but something viciously ongoing, the movie villain thrown from a window or shot 10 times, and yet the gasp, the eye always opening, always the resuscitation, furiously alive. I'd kill him, I said, if I could. It's because you're too nice, Rich said. Guys fuck with girls like you because you let them. I'd shoot him in the dick, I said. That's how you do it? The dick, then the head. No, you wouldn't, he said. Let me guess. You sleep with a gun? Sure. What kind? I don't have to tell you. Smith & Wesson 38 special. You sleep with a big boyfriend too? I'm a dyke. Hey, I'm cool with that, he said. Both palms at me, a shit-eating smile. Then a thought behind his face. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. You'd let him do it again before shooting someone. Guarantee. You don't know anything, I said, and we sat there for a moment with nothing. I didn't go to Stanford, I said. The woman screamed at Joey some more. I thought Joey had been a boy, but now it sounded as if he'd been a lousy lover and owed her some money. The woman threw the phone into her big purse and said, unbelievable, to the rest of us. Where's the bad guy live? Rich said. Florida. You from Florida? Miami? Where's he in Florida? I got friends in Opelika. He's from Hialeah, I said. You know where that is? Like the Gables? Above that. Coral Springs, Coral Gables, I know all the corals. Maybe this man thought that was clever. You know what a pervert park is? That's what they call them in Florida, these compounds. I work in Florida a lot, between the cargo ships and cruise lines, Rich said. What do you do exactly? Boats, deckhand, marina stuff. We'll ask around for Gateway to Grace, I said, trying to prove a knowledge of my own life. Rich nodded his head like he was thinking. He slapped the book down next to him, then buried his face in both hands, breathing in hard. Outside, the clouds parted, a magic 8-ball blue. A little girl on the deck threw pieces of bread or crackers at some gulls that curved down to it. Well, Rich said, you want me to kill him for you? What? I can do it for you, he said. It'd be like an honor, actually. Even the world out in this small way for the nice girls. Oh, wow, I said, that's so selfless. No one would ever connect us, and I'd have no reason to kill this guy, but I could. Easy, without a hitch, I could. Okay, Rich, I said. What are those people eating out there? He looked where I pointed. The birds multiplied and the little girl screamed. Orange life buoys clung to the gates, quivering brightly and weakly as the boat moved. Chowder bowls, they sell them at the bar up front. Chowder and ice cream everywhere, I said. It'd be fun, actually, he said, taking your guy away. But I was going to kill him first. I told you, you don't have it. I can be scary, I said. You don't know. Ask anyone who knows me. I don't know anyone who knows you, he said. Then he said, you couldn't scare anything. I scare. Scare me now, he said. Come on, give me your best. Scare me good. I looked out at the water, deep blue mat studded with white, an identical ferry passing, Mount Rainier glowing like a postcard. I once dated a woman who said she'd never date someone who rolled a suitcase, that it was a lazy, humiliating thing to do, to not hold a suitcase by a strap, a handsome Samsonite from long ago, something with dignity. I didn't know how to scare this man. I never would. You're full of shit, I said. If I am, you are. Are you lying? I am not. I just need his name, said Rich. Gateway to Grace, give me the name. After this, we never met, all right? You'll never hear from me again. Give me your name, I said. Rich, Amani, he said. Do you trust I'm a good person? No. I guess that's okay, he said. Fair. Do you think I'm a good person? I asked. It doesn't matter to me, he said. He shrugged. Does he deserve to die? He doesn't deserve to live. Well, that's the same thing. I don't think it is, actually. Say it, Rich said. Every day when I wake up, it's the first thing I wish for. Him gone, honest. We'll give the name, he said, if you want me to. I stared at him and he stared back. A dare with our eyes, who'd break first. that Disney villain Scar, his twisting bag of clothes. I smiled, caught myself, straightened back up, serious now, scary. Then I broke again, laughing, and my nose huffed as I tried to keep up. He didn't think I could. Calvin Boyer, I said, and he stood as soon as I said it. Well, that was easy, he said. Good for you. He slipped the book in his back pocket and walked away toward the deck. Thank you.
Can we get one more big round of hand for all of our readers? We are actually not going to have time for a Q&A, but tip your bartender, get a drink. Just kidding, Ryan's gonna say things.
Hello. So, here's what's gonna happen. I love everyone, and I love gay time. But we have 45 minutes to drink and be merry and get everything signed, and then we can go to Ginger's or any sort of TJ's, any sort of place that we want to go to afterwards, but I have to make sure that the cafe people get out at 9. So,
Drink fast.
we're gonna drink fast. We're gonna do some signing up right behind this amazing curtain. And please get books, get signed. You can get the books downstairs, come back up and get them signed. So, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.